everyone, and welcome to MeowMix, the Carolina Panthers podcast. My name is Steven.
My name is Jerry.
And today we are going to talk about the Carolina Panthers. Now,
yeah, it's shocking.
Should I narrow that down a little bit?
Probably.
First of all, it's nice to see all of you out there in the audience. It's been a little while since we've done a podcast. We took a week off. I had some stuff going on, sickness and COVID and all kinds of stuff going on in my family, and kind of messed with our child care. And then I got sick, not with COVID, but a different thing. And yeah, it's just been crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is probably the longest we haven't recorded, probably since our first off season.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do much in the first off season.
Yeah. But there's been some stuff going on, some good things that have happened with the Panthers and some interesting things to talk about. We'll say that. So we're going to talk a little bit of news here, and then we're going to kind of have a more deep conversation on where we are right now as a franchise. How do we feel about what the Panthers have done so far this offseason? Some rumors, some things like that. So let's kick it off with a couple of good pieces of news here, Jerry.
Yeah. Former Panther great Sam Mills was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Round of applause. Yes. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Well deserved.
Yeah. Great linebacker, great coach here. Cemented the moniker, keep pounding, that this franchise continues to use to this day. He's the only Panther with a statue in the front of a stadium here. I mean,
it's
awesome.
Amazing for, only playing for the Panthers for 3 years?
3 years.
And I know he was a coach as well, but the legacy that he left is easily he's had the most impact on the franchise. I'll say that.
Legacy-wise, yes. He had the biggest impact legacy-wise for this franchise. Like I said, keep pounding. I mean, everything around Sam Mills. I mean, his son coached here continuously after, he passed and everything. I mean, yeah, you can't mention the Panthers and not bring up Sam Mills, or mention Sam Mills and not bring up the Panthers.
Yeah. When we did our top 20 Panthers of all time, famously, you left Sam Mills out of the top 20, and I had him, I think, at number 4 or 5. And we had a nice discussion about that, and certainly wasn't nothing against you. You laid out reasons why, and I respect that. But I think, and mainly it was you and I looked at the exercise differently, right?
Correct. I looked at the player and what they did as a player.
On the field stuff, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Well, you look more legacy. And legacy-wise, yes, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. And I think Steve Smith mentioned after Sam Mills was inducted, Steve Smith said basically greatest Panther of all time. So, yeah, again, depends on how you look at it, but well-deserved by Sam Mills there. Speaking of linebackers, Jerry, the Panthers are going to have a linebacker stick around this year.
Yes. One of the free agent linebackers re-signed with the Panthers. It's not Hassan Reddick. It's Frankie Louvu, signed a 2-year, $9 million. I mean, good for him. He deserved it. He outplayed his contract. Yeah. I think bringing him back for this 2-year deal, it's essentially a 1-year, $5 million deal that they could get out of next year if he doesn't play up. But we need linebacking help. Hassan Reddick's a free agent. Jermaine Carter's a free agent. And Frankie Louvu, he was a bright spot of the free agency that they picked up last year.
And he, as good as he was a linebacker, he was even better on special teams. He's the only Panther to receive any All-Pro votes this year, and he received an All-Pro vote as a special teamer. So, very valuable member of the team. And of all the guys that came over from the Jets, this was the best one for sure. And congrats to Frankie Louvu, and we're looking forward to him. Both you and I kind of fell in love with him as a player in the offseason last year, and he proved us right. And honestly, congrats to him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we signed him, we were so wrong. We just was like, he's a camp body, and then he started playing. We're like, we need to see this guy more on the field.
Wait a second. He's
making plays.
This guy's better than some of our starters. By the way, goodbye, Jermaine Carter. I don't think he'll be back this year. So we'll see.
But that's the majority of just the Signal news. Now we're just going to kind of go a state of the franchise, because a lot of things have happened recently. first of all, coaching changes. Yes, we had the initial firings of the offensive coordinator, the defensive line coach, offensive line coach. You know, all those guys got fired and we replaced them, and special teams coordinator, and we replaced them. Now, we have a bunch of coaches that were jumping ship from our team to other teams for the not an upgrade at position, just a side to side position.
Yeah, I think we had 4 coaches that left the team voluntarily for lateral moves with other franchises. And there's been a lot of speculation that that's because there doesn't seem to be a ton of confidence that Matt Rule is going to be here after this 1 year. So they are jumping to more stable franchises right now. And I don't disagree with that assessment.
No, I don't either.
Pretty clear. And we'll talk about why I think that's the case here in a few minutes. But let's just kind of run down, and we're going to talk about all of them. So even Ben McAdoo, we'll talk about everybody that's the sort of rotation that this coaching staff has started or that has gone through this offseason. We'll start with Ben McAdoo, replaced Joe Brady, who was fired. We've done a video on Ben McAdoo. If you guys want to listen to that, go back and check it out. But basically, Jerry and I are both pretty positive on this one. It feels like an upgrade. And honestly, in terms of who we could have gotten, it seems like probably the best option.
Correct. You got to understand, this organization was not going to get the cream of the crop this year.
Yeah.
Again, there's a lot of coaches jumping ship because they figure next year's it.
And one of those guys is the wide receiver coach, Frismon Jackson. Left the Panthers, took the same job with the Steelers. He was replaced by Joe Daly, who spent the last 2 years as a receivers coach at Boston College. Has been at the collegiate level all 14 years of his college coaching career. So this is a guy making the jump to the NFL. Don't really have any thoughts on him, honestly.
I don't have thoughts on him, but I do think Frisman Jackson probably was feeling some heat. I mean, look at the drop-off that the receivers did. I mean, Terrace Marshall was a second-round pick that had first-round potential, looked great in the offseason or preseason, and then disappeared. Robbie Anderson had a good season last year, 1,000 yards, and then this year, he looked awful. He dropped so much. I mean, he should have been a guy that may have gotten fired with the first group, to be honest with you.
Agreed. Yeah. I think you and I were both a little surprised that wasn't a change that they made, but I don't know. It sort of feels like Matt Rule could have kept any of these guys, right? He could have stopped any of these guys from going, especially lateral moves. He could have stopped it. He didn't. So I just wonder if it was communicated to these guys that, hey, I'm not going to fire you, but if you find a job somewhere else, go ahead and take it.
And you never know. Maybe when Ben McAdoo got here, he saw him and he was like, yeah, we're probably not going to keep you around long. Or, hey, we're thinking about demoting you and I'm going to bring in my own guy. Right. That happens too. So you're more than welcome to look for another position somewhere else.
Yeah, could have easily been. Next one here is Brian Angelico was let go, tight ends coach, and replaced by Kevin Gilbride. Now, Kevin Gilbride was already part of the staff. He was a defensive analyst in 2021. But if you look at his coaching resume before that, all offense. So it's kind of odd that he was a defensive analyst this past year, but back on the right side of the ball for him. He's been a tight ends coach before with the Giants, with Chicago, wide receivers coach with a couple of teams, including Temple. Hello, Matt Rule. That one, again, I have no issues with that.
Yeah, it looks like he knows Ben McAdoo. He spent 2012 to 2017 with the Giants on Ben McAdoo's, roster. So that's where he knows him from, and that's probably legit why he went from defensive analyst to tight ends. The familiarity.
It's the defensive analyst. What a strange move for him to his whole coaching from 2003 to 2019 on the offensive side of the ball, and then he He's a defensive analyst for one season. So
who knows?
Matt Rule, he's got an eye for talent, man. Yeah, Pat Meyer fired. James Campen hired. James Campen, former offensive line coach and assistant with Packers, Texans, Browns. Lots of teams. Yeah, we talked about him, I believe, in a previous episode, and we both like that hire.
Yeah, someone who's familiar, someone who hopefully will not regress this offensive line like it was under Pat Meyer. So, yeah, good job.
Sticking with the offensive line, Tony Sperano Jr. was the assistant offensive line coach, and he left and took the same job with the Giants, replaced by Robert Kugler, who also comes over from the Texans. And basically he and Campen work together, and that makes sense.
Yep.
Next, there's a lot of coaches. This is a lot of turnover here. Defensive line coach Frank Ocam was fired, replaced by Paul Pasqualoni. Yeah. He has been around a long time. This guy started his coaching career in 1972.
Yeah.
Most recently, he was with Florida, college coach in Florida, special assistant to the head coach. But he was defensive coordinator for the Lions in 2018. Kind of bounced around back and forth college in the NFL. He was with Boston College, Houston Texans. So he's Connecticut head coach in 2011. He's got a lot of coaching experience.
I personally feel like this is a connection with Phil Snow from their sock hop days in the 60s.
I was going to say from when they were both born in the 1920s. He is 72 years old. I think he's going to be the oldest coach on our staff.
I have no problems with him. He has the experience. I mean, he's got a ton of experience. That's one thing that I like about the turnover that we've had on the coaching staff is we're replacing these guys with NFL guys that have a lot of head coaching experience. I have head coaching experience and regular coaching experience, but I think it's very positive for Matt Rule to have some of those former head coaches on his staff as well. I agree, to lean on to, maybe the last group, Joe Brady and stuff, they couldn't go to Matt Rule and be like, hey man, you're really causing some disconnect in the locker room, Yeah. And Matt could.
They may not have even seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may not have even recognized it because they didn't know what to look for.
Correct. Especially consider all college guys. So.
Right. And speaking of former head coaches, Steve Wilks is back.
Yeah.
And he takes over defensive backs coach. Jason Simmons left for the same job with the Raiders. This is a massive upgrade, in my opinion. Now, the defensive backs was not a problem last year for the Panthers. Actually, is probably the bright spot on the team. But Steve Wilks, there's no letdown there. And again, this is another former head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Panthers, and former head coach of the Cardinals. So, and after he left the Cardinals, he was defensive coordinator of the Browns, and then he went to Missouri College. So again, a lot of experience. I really like. That's my favorite one.
That's mine too. And Trey Boston said it best. He mentioned that he was the best coach he's ever had. That he made him play so much better. That he saw the game in a different way after being coached by Steve Wilks. And I kind of felt bad that he got bumped to head coach a little too early in my eyes, and that kind of just grounded him. And then, he got fired from the Cardinals after 1 year, which
I feel like, and you and I don't know if we were doing the podcast at that point, but you and I definitely talked just personally that neither one of us really thought Steve Wilks was ready for a head coaching job after one season as defensive coordinator. And honestly, the defense wasn't that great that season.
Correct.
But again, glad that he's back. I really like him as a coach. Really like him at that position. And then finally, the last one here, rejoice once again, Jerry. It never feels bad to say Chase Blackburn was fired.
And not only that,
go ahead.
He was replaced by Chris Tabor, and Tabor's like one of the
kind of a rock star.
I was gonna say, you said Steve Wilks. This may be my favorite offseason acquisition for coaching. I mean, finally,
this is a great one.
Finally, we may have a kick returner who can go more than 5 yards.
Well, that's what he's famous for, right? I mean, he's one of the guys that with the Browns, with the Bears. He's always got a good special teams, and he's always got a really good return man. So
Joshua
definitely like that one
Cribbs,
as well.
Devin
Yeah.
Hester,
Yep.
the Bears running back, the speedy guy. I can't think of his name.
Speedy guy, Tariq Cohen.
Yes, thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
he was there, so yeah, I'm really happy with that one.
Mr. Speedy Man.
Thank you for saying.
Call
I couldn't think of his name.
I don't know why his name came to me, but so a lot of changes on the coaching staff there. Head coach is still here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk that some of the reasons why some of these guys left for lateral moves is because there's not a lot of faith in Matt Rule. And I think one of the major reasons for that is, where the hell is David Tepper? David Tepper has not spoken publicly this year, I don't believe, about the Panthers. Usually he has sort of a debrief after the season with the media. That didn't happen this year, and I would assume it's because he knows the questions would come about Matt Rule, but he has not given any sort of public I have faith in Matt Rule statement. He hasn't said, hey, we better win this season or changes are coming. He hasn't said that. There's been nothing official from David Tepper, and it kind of frustrates me, honestly.
Especially because David Tepper has come in and constantly been in the limelight, wants the limelight. Like, everything was like, oh, if you're praising me, I'm here to get it. But once this is some serious questions for the franchise and everything, all of a sudden he's, not talking. It's a cold shoulder.
Yeah. And a lot of the questions about the franchise right now surround him.
Yeah.
As the decision maker, the ultimate guy who's making these calls and hiring and firings, at least, when it comes to the head coaching position. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't have a ton of confidence in David Tepper right now.
I don't either.
Between keeping Matt Rule around, which again, you could make the case to where if you're going to hire a guy for 7 years, at least give him 3. The field turf change really didn't seem to make a lot of sense for a multi-billionaire, right? You can afford to keep the grass up, and now this complete silence, I don't like it. It makes me wonder how invested, obviously monetarily wise, he's very invested, but mentally, and does he really want what's best for the Panthers, or just he want to make a buck?
See, that's my feeling too, is I think he wants to win. I don't doubt that. He came in talking a big game, but it seems like after he made the initial kind of couple moves of let's make this thing go, he's just sitting down now and just being quiet, and it's not working. This franchise is a worse place now than when he took it over. And it can't all be put on him, but a lot of the decisions can be placed on him. Keeping Marty Hurney on board while firing Ron Rivera and then firing Marty Hurney right after and hiring Scott Fitterer, I don't know who's making the decisions up there. Is it Fitterer that made some of these bad moves last offseason, or was it Rule? I don't know if it was both of them. Like, where's all this at? And why aren't you talking about how poorly this team has done? This team has been awful the past 2 seasons, and it regressed last year. It regressed.
Yep.
And year 2
it's not been fun to watch for fans. At one point during the season, it seemed like they were trying to get rid of keep pounding.
Yeah.
Before the games, which makes absolutely no sense. I have no idea why that would even be a consideration. That's one of your best assets. Honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody in the NFL knows that as the Panthers slogan. And with Sam Mills going into the Hall of Fame, it makes it look even worse what they were trying to do or considering doing or whatever that case was. And I don't know if Tepper wants to, he just feels like that's a relic of the old administration or what, but You can't get rid of that. That's ingrained.
It's okay. I'm gonna say something now. It's like the Bears. You don't really the Bears. Okay,
Yeah.
we all know that's their kind of slogan. The Bears.
Yeah.
We're not as long tenured as the Bears, but keep pounding is our tag. That's our moniker.
Yeah.
And I personally like
it's
it
sewn
better
on the inside of the jerseys.
Yeah, it
You know,
just makes no sense.
it's everywhere. That's the Panther. You know, you don't change Jets, Jets.
Exactly.
You don't just start changing that to, fly Jets fly, or something like that. You don't do that.
I don't know.
You don't do something like that.
The in-game experience seems like it's taken a backseat too. I mentioned that when I went to FanFest this year, it was kind of a letdown. Yeah. Like usually it's a lot of fun, fan interaction, and I couldn't tell if it was just because Cam wasn't there, and if it's just because of that, they need to get Sir Purr out there and entertaining fans or something. And I hate saying it like that, but they need something. They need somebody to coordinate it because it lost a lot of luster last year.
Yeah, I mean, and you could even mention how they dealt with Cam.
Yeah.
As a real negative on Tepper. Anything Tepper can do to get you back on his good side or bring faith back to you as a fan, other than coming out and just saying something, would be nice.
I think saying something is just the tiptoe of starting.
Yeah.
He needs to really show more love to the fans. I feel like he kind of initially spoke a big game, and then it kind of, all right, that's it. Now, oh, by the way, here's our Charlotte Football Club. Please come buy our tickets.
Yeah. And that's another thing is all of his focus right now, because their season's about to start. Their inaugural season is all the focus now on Charlotte FC, and the Panthers he's just kind of forgetting about them for a while, just leaving it to Fitterer and Rule. The franchise is in good hands.
I guess maybe that's what could have been his plan.
Maybe, but he still should have said something after the season. Like, I want to hear from the owner, especially when there's a head coach that's, that seems to be going into a lame duck season.
I agree.
You got to say something. It hurts the franchise when you don't say something. That could very well be the reason why some of these quarterbacks that we've heard didn't want to come to Carolina. Some of the coaches that Matt Rule tried to hire didn't want to come here, because David Tepper is not sending out the signal that he is confident in his coaching staff and that he's still committed to this coaching staff.
Yeah, it is a surprise. I'm not gonna. It shocks me, but it's just the way I'm starting to pick up on who David Tepper is. Praise me when things are going good. When things are going bad, don't talk to me. I'm not around. It's not my fault.
He's not a guy that's lost a lot in life. He's been very successful in almost everything he's done. And now he's probably seeing some real professional adversity for the first time. And it's interesting to see how he's dealing with it. But I do hope that at some point this offseason we get to hear from him, because I think it's important. I think it would be very important to hear his thought process on why Matt Rule is still the head coach.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I think we're not going to hear anything from him until either this franchise is winning or until they fire Matt Rule and he comes out and says it wasn't working. I gave him a chance. It didn't work. Now we're moving on to somebody else. I think if it continues to go down, he's just not going to talk. He's going to go radio silence.
That's possible. Yeah, that's possible. There has been a rumor that the Carolina Panthers are reaching out to the Minnesota Vikings to gauge trade interest for Kirk Cousins.
Correct.
The quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. This enrages me. When I heard this news, I was enraged. And from what I read initially before talking to you, it seemed like they were pretty serious about it, about talking to the Vikings about a possible trade. And the proposed asking price, from what I read, was the number 6 pick. I would be so angry. I mean, honestly, that might do it for me. Like I put up with a lot. I could try to stay positive. That would bring me really down. I do not like Kirk Cousins. I've not been a Kirk Cousins fan. In my whole administration, I have not liked Kirk Cousins from Washington to Minnesota. He puts up good stats. That's it. Like, he's not a winner. He always makes the big mistake. I don't like Kirk Cousins. I think trading for him, especially if you have to give up your 6th overall pick, even if they take back Sam Darnold, what a massive mistake.
Yeah.
That would be.
Absolutely. I would be livid if they made the trade for Kirk Cousins, because where is this franchise headed? I mean, besides to another being horrible. Again, David Tepper said when he took over, I won't accept mediocrity. Well, bringing in a $35 million quarterback who's mediocre.
Mediocre at best. Yeah.
Like, that's what you're getting. I think he's mediocre. I wouldn't say at best. I think he's mediocre. At best, he's mediocre. He's a little bit better, but not much. So, that being
slightly above mediocre, maybe.
Yeah. I just don't get this. It just would make no absolutely. I agree with you. If they made that trade, bring in Kirk Cousins, give up the 6th overall pick, I'm probably sitting there with you. I am debating my fan loyalty until
it would be tough
until the whole system is redone.
Honestly, like, it would be, and that's definitely a decision I think you have to get the owners sign off on. If you're going to trade your 6th overall pick for a guy that is going to eat up a lot of the salary cap, I mean, I don't even want him to make a pick at 6. I want him to trade back. We need assets. But that would be that. Honestly, that report, Fitterer says he's going to be in on every deal. Man, there's some deals you don't need to be in on, and that's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kirk Cousins is just a no-go, period, honestly, just with his price tag. Not even talking about the 6-pack. If we did the only way I would say it is an even trade for Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. Or something like super late. Because you're taking on $35 million next year.
Mm-hmm.
The Panthers only have $16 million of cap space right now. So, even if you make that trade and get Sam Darnold off your books for, you're still looking at now being basically even. You could free up, I think I read somewhere, they could free up about $20 million with restructuring. So you may be $20 million under the cap, and then you still got to sign your rookies. You'll still have to,
still
build
to
that
offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, that's still like an insane. And then after next year, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
So you're just screwing yourself.
So you're giving up the 6th pick, potentially. And even if it's not the 6th pick, by the way, even if they trade back and they give up a 3rd round pick or something for Kirk Cousins, I still don't like it. I still don't like it at all.
Yeah.
And like you said, you give up the $19 million that Sam Darnold's going to make, and you bring in the $35 million. Well, that's your salary cap right there, like you said.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, I would just be so upset with that. I mean, even if the compensation was exactly the same in terms of what you had to give up for like Gardner Minshew versus Kirk Cousins, or even like Mitch Trubisky versus Kirk Cousins.
Well, Mitch Trubisky's a free agent, so nothing.
Well, I'm just saying that caliber of quarterback, right? A high-end backup that you're going to try to put in as your starter. I would rather try that than bring in Kirk Cousins.
I understand that, especially with the money that Kirk Cousins has. Yeah. It's just Kirk Cousins is better than Sam Darnold. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But bringing him on to this team, you may win 2 more games because you're not building anywhere else. You might end up being in the exact same spot with 5-6 wins because you're not building anywhere else. The quarterback is better, but not great. He's not elite. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not going to be able to shoulder a team on his back and carry them that way. He's not Aaron Rodgers.
And he's also been extremely successful with some of the best wide receivers in the league.
Yes.
Right?
Adam
One
Thielen,
of whom
Justin Jefferson,
ran away from him.
Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, and even some of their other wide receivers are very good. So, and he's had Dalvin Cook. to throw to as well. So, you've got extremely high-end players on that team, and they still haven't really done anything. They've gone deep into the playoffs a couple of times, but never made it to a Super Bowl, never won a Super Bowl, certainly.
I think the only time they went deep is with another quarterback before they got him.
I thought didn't he take them to, or maybe it was when he was hurt and they had Case Keenum in there.
Case Keenum was the one who took them to the, I think, NFC Championship game, or
was that the one against the Saints?
That weird Saints game, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins wasn't even part of that run. So yeah, just say no to Kirk Cousins, please. I don't want to hear Kirk Cousins' name in conjunction with the Panthers again this offseason. I really don't. I hope that's not a thing.
I kind of want to now make you a shirt say just say no to Kirk Cousins.
Put Kirk Cousins' face on it with a,
No, I was going to do like the DARE program, except just say no to Kirk.
Yeah. Just say no to Kirk Cousins. Yeah. Oh, man. What else? Anything else you wanted to kind of talk about with regards to the state of the franchise right now?
Nope.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously know how we all feel about Matt Rule. We definitely hope that he's gone after this season, unless the Panthers make a Super Bowl run or something. But yeah, I mean, there's some talk about, not some talk. I mean, it's happening, but there's going to be some games, some international games this year.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I forgot to put that on the notes.
Yeah, there's going to be a Germany game, at least one, maybe two.
I think it's one every year for the next 4 years.
Okay. How would you feel if the Panthers played in Germany?
I feel almost certain that they will be. Since the Panthers got the rights to Germany, along with 3 other teams, I feel like one of those years it has to be the Panthers.
Yeah, it will. I'm sure. And I would love it. I think it's going to be great. I'm wondering about the time when the game would be played, because I don't know. I mean, obviously, when they play in London, sometimes we get that 9:30 a.m. game. I'm assuming it wouldn't be like a 6:30 a.m. game or something like that. Like, that would be a little too much, I think. But it'd be cool if it was, an early game like that. Again, I'd be fine with that.
I think that's what they would have to do. And I also think with the teams now going 8 home, 9 away, 9 home, 8 away, I think what they should do is get 2 teams that have 8 home, 9 away games. Yeah. Grab one of those away games and just plop it in Germany, call it a neutral site game so that both teams are away. And then neither team really loses out, because the next year they'll have 9 home games.
I think that's the ultimate goal with this 17-game schedule, until they go to 18 at least, is to have every team play a neutral site game.
Yeah.
And I think that should be the case. There's no way that you should have any teams playing 9 home games. That's a big advantage. You can't just give randomly.
I think that would be a really smart thing to do. Maybe go down to Mexico City, maybe Toronto, Vancouver,
I mean, even playing in some of these states that don't have NFL teams. Like, if you can't do all of them international, have a game in St. Louis, have a game in Oklahoma City, some of these bigger markets, San Antonio, some of these bigger markets that don't have NFL teams. Let them have an NFL game at a really nice college stadium there, or St. Louis has an NFL stadium. I mean, I think that would be really interesting, really cool thing. It
would also help drum up business for a city like San Antonio or St. Louis, trying to maybe persuade a team to come there eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that idea. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think the NFL's big enough to not be hurt by empty stadiums on neutral sites, unless you get like the Jets versus, Houston last year in.
Sure. You'd have to make them somewhat compelling.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think, and in fact, maybe those games are the ones you send to London or, Mexico City or something, one of these international things where they just want to see an NFL team. Whereas, if you try to put Jets versus Jaguars in St. Louis, nobody's coming to that. Nobody's coming to that.
No.
So, in fact, I think that if you do a St. Louis game, it has to be the Rams. Number one.
I don't know. They may get booed out of the stadium.
Exactly. That's why you should do it. There's gonna be. I mean, that place would fill up quicker than you could blink an eye. I mean, it would be amazing.
They would be
a lot of fun.
Trying to hunt down Kroenke if he went there.
I know the logistics of that are probably crazy, but they could do it. I mean, you've had NBA teams playing almost entire seasons in stadiums that aren't theirs or in arenas that aren't theirs. Yeah, you had it last year with the Raptors, were Tampa Bay Raptors all season last year. So you could easily do it.
I agree. I think they could do it. They have enough money and prowess to do it. I don't know why they would not. That's a good idea, just in general.
I mean, at least until you can do them all international. I think that you should figure out a way where you're not giving some teams a disadvantage by having 9 away games.
I agree. I mentioned that last year, but I think that's my hope for Germany is that the Panthers will go there on an 8 home, 9 away, and it'll count as one of the away games and count as an away game for the other team too. And then,
That's cool. I mean, I would hope to see a lot of support for the Panthers there. I mean, obviously, like you said, the merchandising and all that stuff, all the rights that they have there now. I might try to find some swag, some German swag for the Panthers. Be pretty cool.
Germany does seem to be a pretty solid Panthers country.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned on our podcast that they're usually number 2.
We do. We have a lot of German listeners. We had an email from a listener out that way. Don't know if he was in Germany, but right around Germany. I believe he was in Zurich actually studying. So thank you for that email. Wish I had your name on me, but I don't. But yeah, I mean, so we see it just as a small Panthers podcast. We see a good bit of listenership from Germany. So
Roaring Riot.
Guten Tag.
Roaring Riot has a Germany chapter. So a lot of German Panthers.
And my family is from Germany. So maybe that's why.
My wife's is.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even more than mine.
Yeah. My wife is a German citizen. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode, Jerry.
Yep. We want to thank everyone for listening. If you like the show, please let your friends know. Please follow us on Twitter at MeowMix Podcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at mailbag@meowmixpodcast.com. And if you leave us a 5-star review with a comment on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it on our show.
Keep checking us out for our player profiles for the draft that are coming out. Hopefully we'll be returning to a regular schedule here of a couple times a week for those. And then, we'll be back pretty soon. Until then, everybody stay safe out there and keep pounding.
Wow.